And I move private members' business item number 964 standing in my name, although I do seek leave of the House to amend the motion by omitting in paragraph 1 million and inserting instead billion. Oh.
Is leave granted? There being no opposition, leave is granted.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I thank the indulgence of the House. And obviously, if I ever have the privilege of a full department behind me, I'll engage a proofreader. But I do make the point that this single letter error on a notice of motion is nothing compared to the very deliberate error made by our state's trade minister during budget estimates, where he very incorrectly guessed the size of the New South Wales economy and couldn't provide an answer when asked the value of the New South Wales exports to GSP. Our trade minister, responsible for growing the economy through trade relationships. The answer to that question, Mr. Assistant President, is approximately $150 billion, according to DFAT, which makes up around 20% of our $777 billion economy. I've already shared with this House that the state of New South Wales is in the Bermuda Triangle of trade policy. Well, we've now lost the mother lode. It wasn't enough that the Labor government threw out the state's trade statement with nothing to replace it. Now they're getting rid of the Department of Trade too. On the 12th of April this year, the government pulled a Friday special. In a 2 p.m. media release, Labor announced the abolition of the New South Wales Department of Enterprise, Investment and Trade, another admission that growing the New South Wales economy is low on the Labor government's agenda. To replace it, we've got the Department of Creative Industries, Tourism, Hospitality and Sport. While the Trade Minister was promising new trade and industry strategies at the beginning of March, it looks like the Premier was plotting the demise of the Trade Minister's very own department. How long has Labor planned this? How long have New South Wales businesses, startups, investors and entrepreneurs been dragged through uncertainty while the government has either sat on its hands or was actively misleading stakeholders? The government has not only slashed funding and staff from the trade networks that increased opportunities for Australian businesses, they've kept the business community and industry stakeholders in the dark. They've now relegated the investment, enterprise and trade portfolio to a sub-ministry. Now there is no dedicated Department of Trade, no mention of trade in the title of any agency or office. I will note, however, that the trade statement developed by the Liberal National Government does still remain on the Investment New South Wales website with targets, strategies and actions still listed. So it begs the question, is it still operational? The Minister earlier in the year stated that, quote, the government will make its own trade statement, end quote, but we haven't heard anything about it. What I have heard is the Minister says he wants to expand it to Southeast Asia because it will be a big market. But where's the action? The Minister had no answer for strengthening the existing relationships that we already have. And in fact, we're cutting those relationships off at the head. For example, in India, we've got an export market, they have an import market worth almost $1.5 trillion alone. And when we look at the Vietnam Education Showcase run by Investment New South Wales, their campaign advertising aims to drive attendance, but will it result in actual deals? I've also heard that hundreds of staff are being retrenched from the trade section of Investment New South Wales, particularly those staff in overseas offices. What I have heard is that measures of success when it comes to trade deals are not going to include those secured in those offshore offices. I've understood that offshore wins aren't recorded, perhaps because they're, quote, too successful. I've heard that no reasons are being given for terminating senior staff who have performed their jobs and offered substantial references from foreign officials and industry leaders in their regions. I've heard that the remaining senior trade and investment commissioners need to justify the necessity of having offshore presence to the Minister by next Friday. Otherwise, trade could be handled by Austrade. But that doesn't bode well for New South Wales, because when I asked the Minister during budget estimates whether there would be any special deals done between Austrade and New South Wales that would mean that we get some preference, I was told that there was no special deal. Our UK Trade and Investment Commissioner has recently left his post, following in the footsteps of the Senior Trade and Investment Commissioner, and with them further staff, leaving our UK representation at just 2 people, and that includes representation for the entirety of the EU, while other states like Victoria and Queensland are increasing their staffing levels to 10 people across Europe and utilising a contracted network of on-the-ground embedded experts. The underlying impact of all of this is that if we lose the value of exports and investment into New South Wales, what replaces it? Our exports are worth $150 billion. More than 60% of our export revenue is coal. In fact, our top trading partners all have set 2050 net zero targets, and China by 2060. So if these exports are declining and we have no plan for growth, where does our economic growth and prosperity come from? We have Victoria, Global Vic, Trade and Investment Queensland. In New South Wales, we are abolishing our Trade Department, and it's an indictment on the government.
Has expired for...
Thank you very much, Mr. Assistant President, and I thank everybody for their contributions. I really think that the government has misunderstood its role as a custodian of our economy, because while we debate very interesting and very important issues, and we have today very serious matters, a lot of them have dealt with funding. And when we think about the amount of funding that we spend on policy priorities, they have to come from somewhere: a growing economy, a growing tax revenue base. They have to actually be rooted in some reality when it comes to a prosperous state. If we don't have strong trade relationships internationally, we are at serious risk of reducing the size of our economy and the opportunity for economic growth. And that reduces our ability to actually provide the social programs that we all want to see delivered, which we've discussed here today. This government has demonstrated that it is entirely a virtue signalling government. It is a social media government. We have the new Minister for Domestic Manufacturing and Local Procurement. That is, if not a virtue signalling portfolio, I don't know what is. There is no legislation under that ministerial portfolio. And yet when it comes to trade, which is worth $150 billion in our economy, what we're seeing is that department is now abolished. We're burying it amongst other activities. And as such, it means that this government has misunderstood fundamentally the way that business works, the way that trade relationships work, is that you have a clear pipeline, a clear mechanism for companies and investors to make investments in New South Wales, and also in the reverse, that you have a place where businesses are able to go and export around the world. And if we don't have those strong relationships, and if government doesn't play an integral role in that, then we are missing out on billions of dollars in growth. This government has no trade strategy. This government has no trade statement. It has been absolutely abolished. The Trade Minister confirmed it earlier in the year. He also confirmed that there is no trade statement or trade strategy to replace it. We are still waiting on that. Where is that? There's no industry policy. We don't have an innovation blueprint. We don't have a trade statement. So when the government and government members come here and suggest that the opposition should be coming up with policy, please look in the mirror for your own lack of ideas, lack of policy. It simply doesn't exist. What is the point in being in government if you're not actually going to take some vision and direction for the state of New South Wales so that we can grow in our economic prosperity?